Hi everyone, this is Jay Johnson with jart.com, and today I'm going to show you another texture, another type of texture, which is really more of a background where you can put your subjects. And I've had a special request to go into detail about grounding a subject within a background. So that's what we're going to work on today. The texture we're using is today's daily texture, which is titled In the Field. Very original, I know. The subject is a cheetah that I photographed at a zoo. Now, just a little bit about zoo photos. A lot of times when you go to the zoo, it's on a bright sunny day. Those don't make the best pictures for being able to do other things with your work when you have a hard sunlight on the subject. I have been trying for 5 years to get to the zoo on a cloudy day, especially for the cheetahs, because they're in a enclosure that is very brightly lit when it's sunny. I got lucky this year, and while I was at the zoo for about an hour, the sun went in as the clouds came in, and the first thing I said was, I'm going back to the cheetah enclosure to get the cheetahs, because I've never been able to get a photograph of the cheetahs without harsh sunlight on them. And I finally managed to do that. That's just a little zoo tip. If you're going to go photograph at the zoo, try to do it on a day when it's overcast. Obviously you don't want raining, but if it's a day that says partly cloudy or mostly cloudy, it would be a great time to go photograph your zoo animals, because when they don't have direct sunlight on them, you can integrate them with so many other textures without the sunlight affecting the image. Alright, so we have this cheetah. We're going to put him in this field from today's texture, and create more of a scene for him. Now, what I'll do first is lower the opacity of the cheetah to see where the grass is coming up, and it's like right in his face right now. So I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm just going to move him around to where there is he's got some height over the grass. Now let's see. Okay, I might make him a little bit bigger and move him a little bit more up so it looks like he's standing in the grass. Alright, that looks like a good position for him, except for one thing I'm noticing. He's sort of walking downhill. The field is sort of straight on, so I think I'm going to turn him just a little bit using a rotate tool. Let's see how that looks, where he looks more straight on. That's a little better. Okay, now I'm going to mask away his background. I'm going to turn my flow all the way over to the right, and there's my bird clock again. I'm turning my flow, which is like opacity, all the way over to the right to get full opacity. The brush value, which is like black and white paint if you're masking using another program, is all the way to the left, meaning I'm going to remove this background, and I'm going to turn my brush size up very big in order to quickly remove a large portion of the background, which is what I'm doing here. I'm just going to go all around him as close as I can without going over him. I'm going to make a smaller brush size as I get closer to him in order to get more accurate around the edges. I don't need complete accuracy. I like the texture to come over top of him. To me, this is not about making a perfect photo. It's about making a piece of art, and with art, things are always, not always very accurate unless you're doing very realistic work. I like realism, but I also like the way you can break the rules a little bit with art. And I've lowered my brush size now. I'm getting along his edges closer. And I'm just going to mask out all of his background that I can without going over him yet with the grass. And it's going to look kind of funny for just a minute or two here as I do this. I'm going to make a smaller brush size. I'm going to go around his ears and his head. There's a darkness behind him because of his dark background. And obviously I don't want any of that showing because he's against the sky, so he wouldn't have a dark line around him. So I try to get as close as I can. And later I'll bring some of this texture over his actual fur. Okay. We're getting there. And you can see this doesn't take very long, especially once you get used to doing it. Topaz software, which is what I'm using. I'm in Topaz Photo FX Lab, which is like a main screen to access all the other Topaz modules over here. You can use this as a standalone program or a plugin, but Topaz has wonderful masking ability that's very, very precise. I'm not going to worry about this little bit in between these two legs because I'm going to bring the grass over that when I mask away some of his feet. Right now I'm just trying to get him in position here and see how he looks. Okay, that's looking pretty good. There's a couple of things though that I'm noticing. The texture, the grass is a warm golden tone. The sky has a cool tone, but overall the texture image is a warmer tone. Normally I would have adjusted my photo beforehand, before I did this video, as far as color tone and such. I didn't do that because I forgot, so we're going to do that now. He is a little cool in tone, but yet this texture is a little warm. So I'm going to try to make him blend a little better with the texture with his colors. And the first thing I'm going to do is denoise him because I do shoot with a high ISO and he is a little bit noisy. So I'm going into the denoise module and I'm just going to click one of these settings, and that takes out a good bit of noise. So let that finish processing. Slow computer. One of these days I'll get one of those new big fast systems with lots of memory that'll work a bit faster. But it gives me a chance to look over my image while this is going on and decide what else I might want to do with this. Okay, that took down some of his noise. Now we're going to go into Topaz Clarity, which is going to pump up a little bit of the detail in his fur. They actually have a setting called Fur and Feathers, and I like Fur and Feathers 1. It just kind of, you can see the difference there. Let's blow this up. Okay, if I hold down the mouse on it, that's before, and that's after I've applied the Fur and Feathers setting. Then they have a Fur and Feathers 2, which actually gives him a little bit more golden tone. But I like 1 because it's not as harsh of an adjustment. I'm going to adjust his tone somewhere else in the program. So I'm going to hit OK. You can adjust these sliders over on the right if you want to fine-tune the detail a little bit more. I'm not very worried about that. Like I said, the work I do is more, I'm trying to be more artistic in nature and not so much realistic, perfect detail. A lot of my photos aren't perfect. And that pumped him up a little bit. A lot of my photos aren't perfect, and by using them with the textures and turning them into art, that doesn't matter that they're not perfect. Now I'm going to adjust his color tones. I'm going to go to Topaz Adjust. They have a setting in the classic collection called Brilliant Warm, which is going to really pump up the golds in his fur. And I could adjust the opacity on that, the transparency of that. That's with no setting applied, and that is with some, and that's with all. Um, I'm going to take it down just a little bit. I don't want him too yellow. So we're going to go almost halfway in between, about 37%. And that'll adjust his color tones a little bit to make him more warmer so he goes with the texture better. Because I like warm tones. There. Now you see his yellow colors have really come out after making that adjustment. Okay, now we're going to mask away some of his legs to make him appear as if he's standing in the grass. We're going to bring up the brush size and we're going to leave the opacity very strong as I do the feet area right in here. And I'm just kind of tapping, leave a little bit of his tail showing. So now it looks closer, but I'm going to lower the flow, the opacity, and take off some more as I go up his legs. And you see that little center section there is disappearing. That's why I wasn't so worried about it. If he was standing in this grass, some of this grass would be coming over the front of his legs, and some of it would be visible behind him if he was really standing there. And I just keep going until I get to where it looks like his feet are really in the grass, and it looks like he's standing there pretty good. At this point, I'm also going to lower the flow a little bit more and just come up the legs just a tad more to pick up some of the softness of the texture and the colors. And I'm also going to lower the brush size at this point and go around his face and get some more of those black lines and bring some of this texture right on into his fur, softening his edges a little bit. Make the brush a little bigger, lower the flow yet a little more, bring it right over his fur so it looks like he's kind of fading into the background. Okay, now that looks pretty good. It looks like he's standing there. And let's zoom out. I do this a lot because sometimes when you have an image and you've blown it up very big, you're looking at all the little details and it's hard to see what the full picture looks like. So I'm going to zoom out here and get an idea. Now it does look like he's really there, standing in this field. Do a little bit more removing his feet and put him down in that grass a little better. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Let's bring him back up to size. If an animal is standing in this grass and there is grass coming in front of his legs, his legs are going to be darker. There's going to be a shadow. If you take an envelope or a piece of paper and you have a pen on your desk and you hold up the envelope or the piece of paper and you slide the pen down behind it, you will notice the color change on the pen as the shadow takes over. It's the same concept here. If those feet are behind grass, they're going to have shadow and darkness to them. Otherwise, it looks like he's just floating or pasted on there. And you don't want that. You want the animal to really look like he's there. Same thing if you're putting an animal on a solid surface. I tend with a solid surface, like if they're standing on ground or sitting on a table or something like that, I tend to leave some of that in the image when I'm blending it with the texture to ground him. But if you want the background totally gone and you want to use a solid background for him, if he's sitting or standing on something, more than likely there will be a shadow underneath where his body is touching the ground. Just like here, he's in something and behind something. Now that he's behind the grass, there will be a shadow on his feet and legs from being down in the grass. I'm going to do something here. I'm going to move him just a little bit. You see this area right here? This area is a little darker. I can grab him. Because I've masked away his background, I can move him around. Whereas if I'd masked away the texture on top of him, I wouldn't be able to move him like this. I'm going to place that front leg in this darker area right here. Now, as you can see, there's a little area over here which didn't get masked away. So we're going to bring the flow all the way up, brush size, and I'm just going to get rid of that and make sure, go around the edges and make sure I've got everything. Okay, now that looks a little better. It looks like he's a little more grounded, but he still needs more darkness to him. Now, there's a couple ways to handle this. Topaz Lens Effects has a great little tool called a neutral density filter, or graduated neutral density right here. And it's got all these different settings. You've got bottom, half one stop, half two stops, quarter one stop, quarter two stops. Obviously, the area where I want to work on is the bottom. So if I hit bottom half two stops, you notice it darkened right here, all on the bottom side. This is before, this is after I hit that setting. Before, see how bright his legs are? After, see how they're darker? The problem is that comes up a little bit too much here for me. So I'm going to go to the quarter two stops. That's darkening more of just this bottom area instead of coming all the way up here. So I'm going to click OK to apply that. Now watch his legs. See how they just pop darker? Still not dark enough though. So I could do that same effect again, or here's another way you can do it. I know most all software has burn and dodge brushes. If you go to that and you click on, I'm adjusting my strength and brush size here, and this got the same thing, flow, which is like opacity. You don't want to burn too heavy, but you want to burn some of this legs, which burn is going to darken them. So we're going to try that at a low strength. And see how that's darkening the leg, and darken this one and this one and this one. Now that's a little better. I could adjust the strength a little more, make it a little stronger, and darken some more. The problem is you don't want to get too dark, because then it'll look fake. And see, that I don't like that, so I'm going to take that back off where it came a little high up his leg. I'm going to reduce the strength and go a little bit lighter there. And then I'm going to increase the strength and just stay down here at the bottom and increase the darkness right there where his legs and tail meet the grass. And you can always, once again, zoom out and see how it's looking. Now it's looking a little better. But here's another thing you can do. Go to the texture background itself and use the burn tool, and also do the grass a little. Oh, that's too much. Back up. Bring that strength down. You can do the grass a little bit. You don't want it too dark. But where his feet touch the grass, there's going to be some darkness there. Brighten that back up a little. Try to get it where it looks kind of smooth. You don't want it like just a big dark spot right there. Now let's zoom out again. Looks a little better. It looks like there's some shadow on his legs now. Now we're going to make some other adjustments that are going to darken this whole bottom area, but here's what we're going to do first. We're going to duplicate the texture layer at this point. We've got the mask pretty good. He does look like he's in the grass, standing there. We've brushed over his fur and brought some of the texture in back here so he blends a little nicely. So we're going to take this texture now and we're going to duplicate it and we're going to pull it up on top. And we're going to try a multiply. Now that makes it very dark. So we're going to bring that opacity of that layer down. I like to get around the 30% range when I'm trying this. This part looks a little too dark. When I duplicated it, it also duplicated the mask for that I had done on that layer, so I'm going to reset that. Now this is just like the original texture set on multiply. I'm going to duplicate that layer again, and it's also duplicated it in multiply, but I'm going to change this to overlay or soft light. Probably overlay. I like the way the light is, it popped up the light on his face a little right there. See, this is before I added that overlay layer, and this is now. And as you can see, putting these two, the multiply and the overlay of the same texture on top, it darkened this bottom area considerably. You can pop them off and see the difference here. Now he's looking better. Let's zoom out. This spot right here by this leg is a little bit dark. So I'm going to go back to the original texture layer where I did that with the burn and dodge. This time I'm going to bring it up to dodge a little bit, which brightens. Burn darkens, dodge brightens. And I'm just going to very gently take some of that down, so it's not quite as dark. Now we're going to zoom out again, and I get real picky about this. That looks a little better. But here's what I can do here on this section. I can actually go to bring it down to where I'm on burn again at a low setting, like maybe right there. Bring the brush size up real big, and my hardness is down on the burn and dodge brush as well. I always like to use a soft brush unless I would be masking or doing some kind of thing around architecture where it had real sharp lines, but I don't work with architecture. So we're going to take this burn brush and go all the way across the bottom to just darken that whole thing a little bit more. And we're going to bring it up to the dodge and bring a little bit of brightness up on the top, back on the top. So burn darkens, dodge lightens. And we're going to burn again on this bottom layer. I mean the bottom of his feet area. And if you make mistakes, Control Z is your friend. Now see, that's getting a little too dark, so we're going to do Control Z and back out of some of that. We're actually going to lower the burn brush strength and try this again. Because you don't want it to be very harsh, you want it to be very subtle. There, that looks better. Let's back out and view it. Now it looks like he's really standing there. You could actually go a little bit further with the darkening on here. In fact, let's try that while we're zoomed out. I've still got the real big brush. Add a little more strength to that. Make the brush even bigger. And just go like this. Might be a little too harsh. Bring on the top. So bring some of that. Nope. Don't like that. Bring it up to dodge. And brighten this a little better. There we go. Now let's bring it back up and look at it. Alright, let's step backwards so you can see where we started. We're going to turn off all or both of those layers and turn them back on. And you can see the difference there. By using the texture itself as an overlay and multiply at 30% and overlay at 30%, you really pumped up the color, you pumped up the light, you pumped up the darkness down here, which is something I like. And if you don't like any of these, what's going on with these layers in a certain spot, say his face, like this made his face a little dark, I could always mask off some of that multiply layer, like say off his face, to brighten things up a little bit more, like that. But now we've got a pretty good image where it really looks like he's standing there and he's grounded, because there is dark shadow on his legs where the grass is coming in front of his legs. And you want it to look, like I said, realistic. It doesn't have to be accurately realistic, because now you're working on art and you're not trying to create a perfect photo. This is beyond the perfect photo. But you want it to look like it makes sense. So with grounding an animal, anytime there is something you're making something come over in front of that animal, it's going to darken the part of the animal where the texture or the background is coming over in front of him. Whatever area is coming over in front. In this case, the grass is coming in front of his legs, so we wanted to darken his legs. If the animal is sitting on something, like a ground level here or a shelf, and you just put that animal on there and you mask out everything around him, you need to darken the area either, in that case, if you've masked out everything around him where he's just there, you would darken on the texture layer right here where he might be sitting on something or standing on something. You'd want to darken under his feet. You want to look at light and shadow. Where's the light and where's the shadow? Wherever the light's coming from, the shadow's going to be on the opposite side. If it's soft light, you're going to have a very soft shadow. If it's real harsh light coming in on one side, you're going to have a stronger shadow. In this case, everything worked out perfectly because the light on the texture is more on this side. The light on the subject was already on this side. If he would have been facing the other way, if the light would have been over here, I would have mirror imaged him and turned him around. So the light, the brightest part of him is lined up with the brightest part of the texture, because that makes sense. And it's the same thing with the feet being down in the grass. Because the grass is over the feet, his feet are going to be darker. They don't look darker. When we originally started, they didn't look darker. But now they do, because I've done some burning. And I've also done that neutral density adjustment. And then I've added more layers on top, which have further darkened this. And I've darkened the actual texture layer you can see here on the mask, where I did a burn brush right there to darken this whole area. So that looks pretty good. So now we're going to merge those together. And see if it works. And I always merge them together on here before I save it, because sometimes with this software it will do something funky, like put a line in there where I don't want it, and I might have to do an adjustment later. It usually only happens if I enlarge an image too much. Like if I enlarge the cheetah too much, it might put a weird line like right in here, and I would have to figure out where that's coming from and make sure to mask that out. This looks pretty good though. I'm pretty happy with this. So I believe I'm going to stop here and save him. Thank you all for watching. I hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions, just drop me a note. Have a great day.